This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch for Tuesday, October 22nd. I'm Mark Martin. Today, the ceasefire in Syria is set to end amid concern Turkey may attack the Kurds again. What will the U.S. and its allies do next? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fails to form a new government. Does this mean still another election in Israel? We'll look at why next year's annual March for Life plans to show that the historic feminist message was actually pro-life. And why dogs are more than pets, how the medical community is using them because they're good for your health. Those stories and more today on Newswatch. We begin in Syria with the ceasefire set to end later today. There's concern the Turks will restart their onslaught against the Kurds. As U.S. troops continue their pullout, there's word that a small force might remain. The U.S. troops were seen leaving northeastern Syria and heading to Iraq on Monday. They were bid farewell by angry Kurds who threw potatoes at them. Some held signs thanking the American people, but saying that, quote, Trump betrayed us. They might not be welcome in Iraq either, as that government says there's no agreement for them to stay there. Appearing on the Fox News show Hannity, the president said a ceasefire agreement would not have been reached without 2.5 days of fighting.
It's like two kids in a playground. They fight, you let them fight for a minute, and then you pull them apart. It was much easier to make a deal.
Senator Lindsey Graham, one of the president's harshest critics on the Syria pullout, is proposing bipartisan legislation with Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen to reintroduce U.S. troops, establish control of the skies, and invite in other nations to monitor the northern Syria security zone. In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told President Reuven Rivlin he could not form a new government, potentially throwing the ball back into the court of opposition leader Benny Gantz to see what he can do. CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell brings us that story from Jerusalem.
Netanyahu returned the mandate to form a government shortly after sundown at the end of the Jewish high holy days.
Since I received the mandate, I've worked tirelessly both in public and behind the scenes to establish a broad national unity government. That's what the people want. It's also what Israel needs in response to the security challenges that increase by day and by the hour.
Netanyahu released a video explaining that he had repeatedly approached blue and white leader Benny Gantz, his partner Yair Lapid, and Israeli Beitenu leader Avigdor Lieberman.
Gantz, Lapid, and Lieberman only talk about unity. In practice, they do the complete opposite. They encourage division and boycott. They reject the religious.
Israelis went to the poll for the second time in 6 months in September after Netanyahu failed to pull together a government of a majority of Knesset members. According to the law, President Rivlin has 3 days to decide if he'll give the mandate to Gantz, who would then have 28 days to try to form a unity government. It's the first time since Netanyahu was elected in 2009 that another leader could be asked to form a government, though Gantz's chances of succeeding are slimmer. Blue and White released a statement saying, Blue and White is determined to create the liberal unity government led by Gantz that the people elected a month ago. Gantz has less backers than Netanyahu, but could also try to build a minority government that would be supported from the outside by the Arab parties, who deny Israel's right to exist. Netanyahu warned against this. If Gantz takes up the challenge to form a government and fails after 28 days, there's another option. At that point, anyone who can bring together a majority of Knesset members could become prime minister. If that fails, Israelis will head to new elections, probably next March.
And Chris Mitchell joins us now from our Middle East Bureau in Jerusalem. Chris, how likely is it that Israelis will go to the polls for another election? And what is causing this deadlock in forming a government?
Well, Mark, it actually seems quite likely that they will go to elections. Benjamin Netanyahu, he had actually maybe 1 or 2 more seats than Benny Gantz to be able to work with to try to form a government. He was unable. It just seems unlikely that Benny Gantz can do it. Nor will, I think, any member of the Knesset be able to go ahead and form a majority government as well. So it does look likely that Israelis, for the third time, which would be historic, actually the second time in 1 year, made history, the third time within about a year year will really make history. So it seems likely the division, Mark, is Israeli society is divided between the religious and secular. That's reflected in the politics. That's why it's so hard for somebody to get the religious and the secular parties to work together. Avigdor Lieberman, that was mentioned in that report, he's sort of the mediator, the kingmaker. He's refusing to serve with the government with the religious. So that's part of the reason why we're seeing this historic deadlock in Israeli politics.
Chris, turning now to the situation in northeast Syria, there's a meeting today between President Erdogan and President Putin. How significant is that meeting?
Very significant, Mark, and it may help shape the landscape there in northeast Syria. Russia has really become sort of the power broker right now in that land because they have troops on the border. Just as about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, U.S. troops were there. So they really have a really upper hand right now. Although Erdogan and Putin really have competing interests right now. Erdogan wants to establish this 20-mile deep, maybe 250-mile safety zone. That's unlikely to happen with Putin there. Putin has his own interests. He's favoring the Assad regime, but still he has his Russian interests to contend with as well. So we'll see what happens out of this meeting in Sochi. It's very important to what's going to happen there on the ground.
Also, Senators Graham and Van Hollen met with a senior SDF representative. What came out of that meeting? Do you know?
Well, you know, Mark, there's a lot of moving pieces. We have Erdogan and Putin in Sochi. We have this meeting just last night with Van Hollen and Senator Graham, meeting with the head of the Syrian Democratic Council, a potentially very important meeting because still things are still fluid, somewhat fluid on the ground. I don't think there's anything set in peace right now. Graham wants to bring troops back to partner with the SDF. He wants to control the skies. I assume that means a no-fly zone. He wants to control the oil fields. He doesn't want Iran to get them. He wants to make sure that ISIS prisoners don't reestablish the caliphate right now. So that is a potentially very important meeting. He also says that the Trump administration says that they're changing their tune, so to speak. He thinks that's optimistic. And finally, you know, Secretary of State Pompeo said this morning, or just last night, that the Trump administration is willing to use military action against Turkey. That would be amazing in the terms of historic. You can imagine one NATO nation fighting another. Where does that go? That could really upset the balance. But that's significant that the Trump administration says they are willing to use military action against Turkey.
You've been in touch with Christians there. Chris, what are they feeling as a ceasefire is expected to end later today?
Well, I talked to one Christian last night, and they know that the ceasefire, probably about 10 o'clock tonight local time, 3 o'clock East Coast time, they're fearful of what's going to happen. They don't know what's going to happen. They have Syrian troops in some of these places, Russian troops, Turkey threatening to come in. Very fearful. That's why people should be praying for the Christians and all the people of that region right now.
Okay, Chris Mitchell, our Middle East Bureau Chief, reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you, Chris. In other news, in China, government authorities tore down a megachurch building in the Funan Anhui and started the demolition job while the congregation was worshiping. The church's pastors were also arrested and detained. The incident happened over the weekend, according to the international nonprofit Christian human rights organization China Aid. China Aid's president called it another clear example showing the escalation of religious persecution today by the Chinese communist regime. And you can read more about this story on CBNNews.com. And in Britain, Chick-fil-A just established their first outlet on the soil of the United Kingdom, and it's already closing. This after the Christian fast food chain was targeted by pro-LGBT groups with complaints and boycotts. Barely a week after opening in the city of Reading, the city's center mall, The Oracle, announced it will not be renewing Chick-fil-A's lease. In a statement, the company said, "We have decided on this occasion that the right thing to do is to only allow Chick-fil-A to trade with us for the initial 6-month pilot period and not to extend the lease any further. We seek to offer an inclusive space where everyone is welcome." Coming up, although the feminist movement today is identified with the pro-choice side on the abortion debate, the early feminists in America a century ago had a very different point of view. We'll tell you about that when we come back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Get the top political news and analysis from Washington on Faith Nation, tonight at 6 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel.
Feminists have always proclaimed they fight to make life better for women, and most of them believe that includes ensuring the right to abort their unborn children. But as Paul Strand explains, the theme of next January's annual National March for Life will attack the very heart of that idea by looking back at the historical link between the early feminists and why they were pro-life.
See abortion as the great...
As this panel talked about the new March for Life theme, they looked at suffragists and what many consider was just a struggle for women's right to vote.
This is the 100th centennial of a woman's right to vote this year, and so our theme is very much related to that. So it's life empowers, pro-life is pro-woman.
You might wonder what the right to vote has to do with the right to life. Well, 100 years ago, feminists understood instinctually that the two are intrinsically linked. They needed the protection that came from the power to vote in our republic, and they needed protection for the little unborn lives that only they could nurture and bring into the world.
To be pro-woman was to be pro-life.
Saren Foster heads up Feminists for Life.
What most people don't understand is that the first wave feminists were, without known exception, all pro-life. They believed in the rights of slaves to be freed, the right of women to vote, and they believed in the right of women and children to be protected from abortion.
Talk show host Gloria Purvis addressed today's radical feminism.
We hear a lot of the lies, particularly about African American women, that it's better and more empowering for African American women who are poor and struggling to abort their children. And I'm here to say that that's absolutely a lie. The way to solve poverty is not killing the poor, but supporting the poor.
That's why pro-life groups like Foster's fight to solve the problems women often feel force them to abort their babies.
To try to make lives better for those at highest risk, who are most overwhelmingly the poorest among us.
And Mancini hopes to empower women to fight the idea that feminism is all about the right to abortion.
And show clarity, show truth, and hopefully lead the culture to a place where abortion is unthinkable.
The next March for Life is coming January 24th in the nation's capital. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Still ahead, we're going to show you how dogs can be more than just pets. They're actually now an important part of the medical community. We'll bring you a look at Dr. Dogs right after this.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
a 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. If you have a dog, then you already know they're much more than companions. It turns out dogs are now an important part of the medical community. Lori Johnson spoke to a woman whose dog helps her live with crippling narcolepsy. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what so-called doctor dogs can do. Here's CBN Health reporter Lori Johnson with a look at these important dogs and a segment from tonight's Healthy Living program on the CBN News Channel.
We're back with Danielle Brooks, who lives with narcolepsy, and her sweet dog, Rollo, and Maria Goodavage, author of the new book, Dr. Dogs, How Our Best Friends Are Becoming Our Best Medicine. And Maria, you feature so many people with different medical conditions in your book who are helped by these dogs, such as Clay Ronk and his diabetic alert dog, Whitley. Clay has type 1 diabetes, right?
Yes, and they learned about it during a terrible emergency when he was 7 years old. He had to be rushed, airlifted to San Francisco Hospital, where they saved his life. And he tried for years to get one of these dogs who can alert to high or low blood sugars. And when he was 14, he was paired with Whitley, who is truly a lifesaver. She is so good about staring at him, and she has something called a brinzel, which she can pick up. It's hanging off of her, like a tube hanging off of her collar. And when she smells a low blood sugar, she'll sit and stare and just make sure he knows, and he'll test. And she's inevitably 15 or 20 minutes before his devices, before his monitors. Yeah,
wow.
It's incredible. And she actually can awake from a deep sleep to tell him that he's going into a low. So it's, yeah, she's a lifesaver. And she also goes to college with him.
Oh, wonderful,
yeah.
wonderful. Well, you also talk in your book about doctor dogs who help people who are prone to having seizures.
Yes, yeah, that's another one of the wonderful things they do. They give people back their lives because people do not know when they're going to have a seizure. And so the dogs are now being trained to sniff before they can tell the scent of someone before they have a seizure. There are probably other signals that they're using, but now it's they're training them on scent for the most part, and they can also tell them, don't, here, you're going to have a seizure, and so they won't shower, or they'll sit down if they're outside, they'll take their medication, and then like Danielle's dog, they're with them while they're seizing. They're trained what to do. Some call 911 or the nearest relative, and they're just best friends in these situations.
We have a picture of Leslie Fong and her seizure alert dog named Bud.
Yes.
And these two are good buddies.
This is just after one of her tonic-clonic seizures. Those are grand mal seizures. And he's there. He cuddles up with her. He actually goes underneath her. He sidles up to her so she doesn't get damaged when she's going through one of these seizures, and then he's there with her for the stage after the seizures. He's her best friend. I just saw her the other day, and they're doing great.
Oh, that's wonderful.
What's really cool about the seizure alert dogs is that's like an innate ability. So once they figure out that dog can alert, then they go in and can keep on working and training that skill.
Some dogs can get it, and some dogs don't. And a lot of the times the dogs self-train, and the people realize, wait, my dog is getting anxious, and then 10 minutes later I have a seizure. So those people can can learn to read their own dog, and it's really a life-saving mission.
Fascinating. And we know that some dogs can even detect cancer, which is mind-boggling. A lot of people can't believe that dogs are able to do that, but you talk about a Japanese community that has a very high rate of stomach cancer, and they're using Dr. Dogs there.
Yeah, and that's actually that's the first screening study. Most of the work in cancer is being done in research centers. Now, get it out of the way. These are not beagles locked away in cages. These are happy dogs. They're usually pets who come in for the day, and they're really trained, and they can detect cancer around a cancer wheel. And in Japan, they have a very high stomach rate of cancer in this gorgeous community, and you would never think, oh, such a high stomach rate, but they're not looking at why the stomach rate is so high, but at how they can do detection rapidly, non-invasively. And this Dr. Miyashita is a doctor in Tokyo who specializes in stomach cancer, and he was able to work with the community and using urine samples do a detection on about 1,000 people in the community. And this is the first one in a real town. Everything else has been laboratory. And it's hard because you can't reward the dog if you don't know if it's cancer or not. So there were some stumblings there, but they did a really good job, and they're continuing with this.
So you talk about psychiatric service dogs, mental health, and we have a picture here of Angus who's helping Kit Heiser. What's that situation like? She's in a mall.
I was
she has
with
anxiety,
them. I took
right?
this picture. Yes, she has very significant anxiety, and they were in a mall, and she started getting kind of anxious and nervous, and she just asked him exit. And he knew where the exit was, and he was able to get her to the exit. This can happen in concerts, and he also leans into her and does all the things that dogs can do to lessen the anxiety that people have, but in a very direct way. That's really helpful to her. They have a lot of skills around these, and this is very common with dogs trained for PTSD as well.
Wow, fascinating interview there. To watch the entire show, tune into Healthy Living tonight at 9:30 Eastern Time, only on the CBN News Channel. Coming up, as Israelis and Jews from around the world celebrated the biblical Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem in recent days, they also took part in an ancient biblical tradition. We'll have that story when we come back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
Check out the CBN News Daily Rundown podcast each weekday with me, Caitlin Burke. Click on the show tab at cbnnews.com where you can listen and subscribe.
Israelis and Jews from around the world packed the Western Wall Plaza in Jerusalem during the recent holidays celebrating the biblical Feast of Tabernacles. As CBN correspondent Julie Stahl shows us, they came to take part in an ancient biblical tradition.
Masses of Jewish people streamed through the old city streets to reach the Western Wall. They came for the Birkat HaKohanim, or priestly blessing, during the biblical holiday of Sukkot.
We've been coming here for thousands of years for this special day. The priests from all over the country come to the Wailing Wall to bless the Jewish people, and we feel it incumbent upon us to come here and receive those blessings.
Really, really fabulous for me, for my family, to come here, to be inspired by seeing hundreds of thousands of Jews together. It's amazing. Really, really amazing.
In the book of Numbers, God commands Moses and Aaron to bless the children of Israel. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. The Aaronic benediction, or blessing, is a daily part of Jewish prayers, and during Sukkot, Jewish people gather from around the world here to give and receive this ancient blessing. Jewish men, believed to be part of the priestly line, come to bless the people of Israel.
We are gathering here to, shake our lulav and a sorghum, which I have in this case over here. And especially today is very special. We have a communal collective Birchas Kohanim, which is the blessing of the priests. I happen to be Kohen myself, so I was just there.
Another part of the prayers comes from Leviticus 23, where it says to bring the fruit of beautiful trees, palm branches, the boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook, and rejoice before the Lord. That's why they wave the palm branch, citron or etrog, willow, and myrtle branches.
It's a special day, reminds us a little bit of our history. The closest as we can be to 2,000 years ago, where we had the temple and we could have come.
Some say the more that come to bless and be blessed, the better.
And this is one of the holiest blessings that we can get from the priests, and at one of the holiest places.
We want to just take every opportunity we can get in the Holy Land, so that's why we're here.
Is this your first Birkat HaKohanim?
Yes, it is.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, the Western Wall, Jerusalem.
Wonderful to learn about those traditions. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on social media. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.